Good afternoon. Welcome to Freedom Deals Live. I think it is the 25th of March, 2026. And for those that haven't done Freedom Deals Live before, what we do in these sessions is we go through deals that I'm either having a look at the moment, considering purchasing, that I'm doing due diligence on. We can go through existing deals of mine or people that I know, or past deals of mine. And ultimately, the goal here is for this to kind of be a little bit like you doing the repetitions, going to the gym, starting to look at sites, pull apart sites, know what to look for, know where the problems may lie, know where the opportunities might be, and ultimately flexing that muscle that you need to flex and do repetitions of, so that you can identify where good opportunities lie. I would always suggest, even with these sessions, that before buying your first site, that even if you are 100% convinced, that always have someone that is experienced in this look over it for you, because there is definitely that world of you don't know what you don't know. But this is meant to help you along that journey. So before we really kick off, let's do a tech check. Can you hear me? Can you see me? It's all looking good on this end. But yes, if you can pop into the comments that you can hear and see me, that would be much appreciated. I can see a bunch of you have come in already, which is great. For those that are new, comments are always delayed, unfortunately, on this platform. Thanks, Roland. Good to see you. Like clockwork, mate, every week. Good to see you. Yeah, the comments are a little bit delayed, guys. So yeah, just allow for that. I will come back to them. And for those that are watching the replay of this, pardon me, if you comment on this video on YouTube, I will see it and I will come back to you. It definitely won't be instant. I make a very strong effort to not spend a lot of time on socials. So I do check it every few days. All right, that being said, before we kick off on this property, there's a couple of things that have just been happening for me in my development business in the last week that I think are worth sharing. And so one today, which I'm going to call was a bullet dodged, pardon me, and it's been a lesson for me because it's the first time it's occurred to me. But one of the things that I have learned over the years with developments is once you get going, you can never take too many photos. You just cannot take too many photos. Now, why do I say that? Because when you're taking the photos, so the context here is you're going out on the site and construction has begun. Okay, so you've started this development. You might be in the subdivision phase, you might be in the earthworks phase, you might be in the connections being made. And if you're building, it can be the construction of the dwelling. You can't take enough photos because the thing is, often you don't know what you're trying to get a photo of. You don't know what evidence you are looking for. So the best thing is to do is basically just take lots and lots of photos all the time from all different angles, so that if in a few months' time you require evidence or support or something, you have the ability to go back through that and look at that. You know, I bought myself a drone specifically for my larger sites so that every time I go out, I put it up and I go all around the site taking video and photos, because there has been disputes that I've had to deal with where a contractor has claimed a certain thing, and I know it not to be true, but that's one thing. Having the evidence is another. But then when you can refer back to that evidence, you obviously don't want to be in these disputes, but you want to have the evidence on hand if you need it, or to remove the he said, she said, and keep the relationship strong. And I had a recent one today, which was with council, in that we've had an RFI come back, which is a request for information on one of our DAs. Which basically, for those that are unfamiliar with the process, is that means we've lodged our DA, the council has gone through their statutory period of assessing it, and they've come back and gone, hey, before we approve it, we need some more information, or approve it or decline it, we need some more information. When you get that RFI, you will have a pretty good idea as to how your application is faring, as in, is it in trouble, or is there just a few I's to dot and T's to cross? In this case, it's just dotting I's and dotting T's, which if you've done your due diligence well, typically will be the case. But in this one, what they've come back with is a photo of, so obviously they've gone out to site to do their inspection, and in the, it's in a cul-de-sac, and there is this section where there is, the bitumen is all broken up in front of our site on the street. And basically they've put it to us going, you wouldn't say they've accused, but asserting that we have caused that damage, which then will obviously put the onus back on us to fix that. And that's no small thing, especially when it's considerable damage in the bitumen. And immediately we thought, far out, like, did we get photos of the street in front? I always take lots of photos of the site, but I'm typically standing on the street taking the photos. Like, have I got a photo of this to prove that it wasn't us? Anyway, luckily, the street view that was taken in like 2022 or something shows that damage already. It was to a lesser extent, but obviously that is 4 years ago. And so now we can go, hey, look, here's the evidence of it back in 2022. This is existing damage. It wasn't us. And then we're not responsible for it. But if we didn't have that evidence, if we weren't, now I haven't gone back through my photos. Maybe I do have a photo. But if I didn't have a photo and Street View didn't have a photo, then council would be going, all right, you want plan sealing, you go and fix that. So, all right, looks like we've got some spam comments again, unfortunately, guys. The key there is just, you never know today the evidence you're going to need in a few months' time. So just be on the cautious side and just take always a lot more photos than you think you need, a lot more videos than you think you need. There's no harm in doing that, but there may be a very expensive harm if you don't do that. So there's my tidbit. Now, the next thing is in terms of market. So actually, we'll hold that to the end. Okay, so in terms of what I'm seeing in the marketplace and what I'm seeing, well, yeah, look, where we are in the cycle, what I'm seeing in the marketplace, where I think we are in the cycle, and again, risks and opportunities. We'll hold that to the end. We'll do the site now, and then we'll have that discussion at the end. Feel free to put in the comments what you think's going on at the moment, and do you think the market's going to continue going up? Do you think it's going to go down, sideways? What do you think's going to happen with inflation? What do you think's going to happen with interest rates? So feel free to pop that in the comments now while I start on the site, and yeah, we'll have a chat at the end. Okay, so this is the current site. Now, it's actually on 2 lots already. So we've got this existing property here with an existing dwelling. And then we've also got this one here. So this is something that my team analyzed earlier this week, or actually, sorry, probably last week. And intentionally, this is the first time I'm having a look at it with you. Like I genuinely do that on purpose because I want you to see, in some cases, how I stumble through this. I want you to see the genuine curiosity and the genuine questions that I'm asking myself as I go through this. So it dispels any myths that you reach a point where you just have all the answers. Okay, so we've got 2 lots. Obviously, the idea is to subdivide it into more. We've got 1,000 square meters here. We've got 850 square meters here. So call it, I think it was roughly 1,900 altogether. It's in general suburban, residential suburban neighborhood, which in this particular council typically means 600 square meter block minimums and 12.5 meter frontages. Now, on this particular one here, what they've done is they've gone and got the DA to, I suppose, try and reach a large enough, well, they're trying to de-risk it. They're trying to remove the uncertainty around it and obviously wanting to sell it for a higher price. On larger sites, that typically does make a big difference. Smaller sites, DA approved, makes a difference, but it's not typically huge. Why? Because with smaller sites, there tends to be, infill sites, a lot more certainty around what the outcome is going to be. You know, you either fit the code or you don't fit the code. And if you're just outside the code, council will give you a pretty good indication as to, is this going to be approved? Is it not going to be approved? Whereas when you're coming to larger sites, the numbers can swing pretty significantly. So you might think that you're going to get 50 lots, but then the council comes and says, oh no, we want the average lot size to be X, Y, Z. And now you're only getting 30 lots. So that sort of uncertainty with larger sites, which has such a big difference on the numbers, makes the fact that you've gone and got the DA and removed that uncertainty a lot more valuable. Really, the only question then for the person who's looking at buying it when it's a DA approved site for larger sites is, okay, now what is it going to cost me to produce it? That's very helpful. Okay, so we're basically looking at a 2x4. So first of all, in the comments, what do you see on this site? I've told you minimum 600 square meter lots and 4.5 meter frontages is the code accessible outcome that they're going to be looking for here. So in terms of frontage, we've got 26 meters and then we've got another 30 next. So let's call it, what did I say, 26? So we've got 66 meters. So if we're talking 12.5 meter frontages, we do have enough for 4 frontages there. Do we have enough for, do we have 2,400 square meters? No, I don't think we do. What did I say? 1,000 and 850. Okay, so this is interesting because let's have a look at the project afterwards. Because I think originally, actually no, that confirms it. Originally, I think they were looking to subdivide it into 4, and I believe it was knocked back, and they've only been given 3. Which, look, realistically, I think is the better outcome anyway financially. Why do I say that? Because to get it from 3 to 4, you had to demolish the house. So the cost of getting 1 more lot was demolishing the house. For those that have been watching for a while, you know that I say, as a general rule of thumb, you need to be able to get at least 2 additional lots to make it worth demolishing the dwelling. So even if they could have got the 4th lot approved, it actually wouldn't have made sense economically for the project. All right, and let's just have a look locality-wise. All right, it's not a main road, but it is a thoroughfare. Okay. Let's have a look at Street View, see if there's anything else that jumps out to us. Roland, you're seeing 2 front blocks, 1 back. You will see. What do you think? What would you do if it was yours? Which one's us? I think this is actually it here on the Street View. Yep. And this must have been removed. Yeah, that's the triangular blocks here. So this has obviously been removed, and that's the existing dwelling that we're now talking about. The first thing I notice when I look at this is, number one, we've got a footpath all the way along. All right, so any damage caused to that footpath, who's liable? We are. Next thing I see is overhead power, but across the street. Okay, so if we're talking 3 lots, so looks like that's the existing connection there to that house. So if the house is staying, it will be allowed to stay on its existing connection. Pardon me. But the 2 new lots being prepared over here will need to go underground, most likely. Why? Number one, because there's no way of running a cable from that pole to 2 blocks without it crossing one of the other blocks. So there's your first negative. The other thing just being the appetite for council these days is they're just not a fan of overhead power. Where possible, they force you underground. Which, look, it does look better. Yeah, in the areas though where it's all overhead power, don't necessarily agree it makes a whole lot of sense, but I do agree that property poles, private property poles, aren't exactly the most attractive. Yep, so Roland, you've spotted as well, power on the other side. The other thing I'm seeing immediately is it looks like there is a gentle slope to the rear, or at the very least, the land is lower than the street. So you can see on that driveway there, it slopes down to the house. So in terms of achieving a legal point of discharge, getting the stormwater off the site, now they've got the DA approval, okay? So remember that, that's good. But the question is, how are they achieving that? I'm going to guess that they have had to fill the site to achieve the legal point of discharge, which decent amount of fill, probably some retaining around the outside. So that's pretty expensive stuff for a 3-lot subdivision in a not so affluent area where property prices are super high. So let's have a look at the servicing. Actually, first of all, because this is DA approved, we will look at the preliminary service plan. So now some of you may not have seen one of these. We have gone through them in the past, but not every site we look at is a DA approved site. So this isn't available for all the ones that we've got. Oops. So you know it's live when I forget to put my phone on silent. Okay. So if we have a look here, we can see if did they actually provide us with a key on this one? No, they haven't. So I have to make some assumptions here. Okay, so we've got water in the street here. All right, so it looks like we're getting a water connection here and here. Maybe an existing water connection there. And yes, that's the existing water connection there from where it was. Okay, so now they have actually got 4 lots, which is interesting because that goes against what the what code accessible is. Now, what I'm going to guess, and I don't know this, because it's interesting when you see these things, when you see council move away from the position that they've held very strongly for a long time, it's always something to pay attention to, because it can be where you now get to look at other sites in a different light and enables you to see something that others don't see. So in this case here, what have we got block size? They haven't actually labeled it on there. Let's see. Yeah, so they've actually approved lots smaller than 600 square meters, which is very much against how this council has previously operated. But what we're starting to see is in this climate of massive land shortage and a lot of political pressure for more housing, I've been expecting to see something like this happen where the council is starting to look at things and go, you know what, we previously took a stronger stance on this, but our number one priority right now is new housing. And for them, the key that they will have looked at is the general frontage. Number one, on average, is over 12.5 meters. And only this one here is actually under 12.5 meters, but only marginally. And it's for the existing house. And I don't know if they took this into consideration, but so they've done an indicative carport here as a new car accommodation because this would get removed. So, all right, so that's interesting. So it does actually look like the house can be kept because that's just a concrete courtyard. So all that can be demolished. And there, all right, let's go back. So I've got to look at that with fresh light now that I've seen that. Yeah, okay, fair enough. All right, as I said, this is the idea, is I want you to see me work my way through this, not pretend I know all the answers straight off the bat. But now, interestingly here, they've got this, so yeah, existing courtyard. What I'm looking at there is the roof line. Because on here, it looks like one piece, but what I'm guessing, potentially, that is an addition which is easily removable. It looks all one piece there, but obviously the resolution is not particularly high. What I'm looking at there is it's one thing to have the DA approval done saying, yes, you can do this. What is the practical application of, or the reality of us actually removing that section? Is it a relatively simple thing to do, or is it now causing all sorts of structural issues for the roof? Is it going to mess up the roof line and, cause way bigger problems than it's actually worth? So let's work on the assumption that that can just be cut off that section. Certainly not the first time I've cut off a section of a house. I've cut off much larger sections of houses to make DAs work and make subdivisions work. So actually, if we look at the street view, that might give us... All right, tile roof, not ideal. Always easier with ColourBond when you're modifying roofs. The fact that it is the same roof line as this section over here, I believe that change can be done with relative ease. Now, I'm also looking here going, okay, where's the new entrance to the house? Because to me, it appears as though this is the current entrance, which obviously if we're removing that section of the house and creating a new boundary over there, 1.5 meters down the side. Okay, so you could still have your access there. All right, look, it's going to be very pokey. Not my DA, but it's potentially doable. And in a housing shortage and housing crisis, all right, kudos to council for pushing the boundaries to actually push something through. Okay, so we're looking at 4 lots and 1, 2, 3, 4. So the big thing here is council has been very lenient on the minimum lot size, typically 600 square meters here. But basically the approach they will have taken is, well, you know what, from the street you won't know, because that will have been their justification. Because from the street, it will be the same as what is typically allowed in that area. Is they are, in most cases, at least 12.5 meter frontage. And from the road, you won't know that the blocks don't extend back further. From the road, it will look the same. So it kind of ticks their box for that reason. All right, let's have a look. Service plan we had to look at. Where is the sewer? Okay, so sewer runs across the back fence. That's ideal, especially when the ground is typically moving that way. And it looks like, yep, an extension needed. So the existing sewer comes across to here. That to me looks like they're implying a new manhole needs to be constructed, which is typical when you're then changing the direction of the sewer. And then this is an extension of the sewer here to feed lot 4, proposed lot 4. Water is in the street at the front here, so that's fine. What you can see here too is these dotted lines here are the contours. So this is 25 meters above sea level. This one here is 24.75 above sea level. So you can see there that there's a 25 centimeter fall to there, and then probably another 25 centimeters. So there's a half a meter from here to here. 25.5. Yep. So you've got nearly a meter fall from the front to the back. Well, actually, if you include that back section there, you've got more than a meter. So that is a problem for legal point of discharge. But I've got a DA and there's a preliminary earthworks plan here. So I can guess what the solution is. Yes, it is fill. Okay, so if you have a look in the key over here, this is telling you how much fill is needed in each area. This is the model. So when you look at the darker green sections like this back section here, I believe that is this, kind of hard to tell. I think that is maybe this one here, 1 meter to 2 meters worth of fill, which makes sense because you don't need to bring it up to flat. You need to bring it up to sloping towards the road. Just looking at Roland's comments here. Yep, there's another entrance on the right side of the house. Yep, thanks, mate. Okay, so it looks like, yeah, 1 meter to 2 meter of fill required at the back here, and then tapering off to half a meter to a meter, down to 25 odd centimeters to obviously a lot less at the front. Now, I presume that means we're doing retaining around the edge based on this design. Let's see if there's any notes about that. Look, I don't see any notes. Oh, here we are. Yeah, retaining wall. There we go. Yep. So basically retaining all the way around here and lifting the thing up a little bit like an island, which is never the most attractive thing. But that is the approved solution. So yeah, it's a considerable amount of fill for a 4-lot subdivision. Here we go. Import 906 cubic meters. So if you think, so total cut, total fill, it's quite a lot. So if you think of those big tipper trucks, they're typically like 10 cubic meters, 15 cubic meters, maybe 20 cubic meters. So think how many trucks you need to import nearly 1,000 cubic meters. That's a lot of trucks. That's not cheap. Unless you can find a site nearby that has excess fill that they currently have a cost to remove, in which case they may be willing to deliver it to you for free. Still requires operators on site to do the earthworks. You don't just get to pour it on the site and roll over the top of it. It's got to be done in increments. I forget what it is, whether it's every 50 mil, depending on the level of compaction that is required. But here, I'm guessing it's going to be level 1 compaction required, which means you're laying on in thin levels, compacting every level. Got to have geotech out there, and it's all done under a microscope. So that's going to be a hefty bill. So you wouldn't need to fill lot 1? No, because it's the existing house. So if you think with the house there, you can't fill it. Because if you go and fill around the house, now the house is in a hole. So that's why the retaining is down this side boundary here, because it has to remain as it is. You can't fill around the existing house. And it already has a functioning legal point of discharge. So, because it's an existing dwelling, it gets to continue on as it is because it meets the rules that were in existence when it was built. So because we're not changing that house, it can stay as it is. Okay, so that's a big red flag. And the reason I say that is often people that are selling DA-approved sites or selling these small residential sites that are not experienced developers, they often have, sorry guys, that's my computer talking about phone calls. They often have very little knowledge of what it actually costs to do this. And so in their head, they're just thinking, oh, well, they've just got to bring in some dirt. It's like, well, that might cost 100 grand. That might cost 200 grand. That might cost 300 grand, depending on how much fill it is and what the availability of fill is at the time. That's another thing, is at times there is surplus fill and it's easy to get and it's cheap to get. Other times, an entire site can be ground to a halt because there's not enough fill around. So there's all of these things that come into play when you are talking about filling sites like that. All right, so not loving that for, it's adding a lot of complexity and cost to a 1 into 4. Okay, so we've looked at the service plan, prelim, okay. We don't really need to look at the other dial before you did because it's already DA approved. They've already had to prove that it works. We've now seen what the water and sewer is like, so we know, what we're dealing with there, so we can estimate the costs. Communication, we will have NBN for sure, but let's have a look. Don't think it'll be that one. All right, so there's actually a stormwater infrastructure in the road, which is interesting. The fact that there wasn't a viable solution there to tap into that stormwater pipe. I'm actually quite if this was mine when I was looking at this initially, that's what I would have been gunning for, as to how do we tap into that existing network? Because if it's deep enough, then even the fact that we slope towards the back, then potentially, if that pipe is deep enough, we can still just pipe into that without touching any earthworks here. So if everything else on this site ends up looking good, that's a question I would go back to my engineer with and go, hey, is there an alternate solution here? Have they overlooked a possibility? That's interesting. Good that we saw that. Water and sewer, as we know. So interestingly, there is no NBN plan. Okay. Look, I highly doubt that. Oh, here we are. Yeah, NBN straight across the front. Okay, so basically power, we know we're probably going to have to bring it over the road and do underground power for the new lots. And then for sewer, we know it's at the back. We're going to have to do a manhole and an extension. And for water, we just tap in at the footpath. So I don't actually know how to silence that on my computer. Sorry, guys. Maybe I do. Okay, so let's have a look at the numbers. Any other questions before we go further with it? And acknowledging that the comments are delayed. So I'll keep moving. Put any questions you got in there about the servicing and everything else. So my team has used this template this time, which I know is different from what we typically do. Normally, I will use this feasibility template if we have a street. Basically, once we've got to the size of a project where we are building roads. Reason my team has decided to use this one this time, number one, I know this acquisitions manager is more comfortable with this template. He's more experienced with it. Number two, he's actually gone and got some estimates for all of the costs. And so in this sense, it's simpler for him to tap it in. Okay, so we're looking here. He's done his estimated timeframes. Here he's estimating 16 months from start to finish. Total lots, 4, sales period, 3 months, which realistically in this current market, you can sell land like that. That being said, if interest rates continue to push up and inflation continues to push up, might see some changes there. Okay, so crucially, DA is already done. So we don't need to allocate any costs to the DA. We do need to allocate costs to an operational works approval because there is an earthworks plan required. And what they've got there is labeled a preliminary plan. I think it was specifically. So it's not approved. So we don't actually know that that would be approved. Seems pretty logical though. But yes, we need to allocate costs to getting the operational works approval. And also the consultancy that is going to be required throughout the execution of that plan. So in this case here, he's gone and got the estimates. So driveways, 15 grand, stormwater, 10 grand, sewerage, 25, water, 9. They all seem pretty fair to me. Retaining 43 and fill 30. I think that 30 potentially could be optimistic. Let's get that out of the way. Yeah, this is the figure here that I think I'm most uncomfortable with. It could go either way drastically depending on current availability for fill and also the volume of it. Retaining is probably fairly accurate enough at this point, and erosion control. So 135,000 for costs on site, which is allocated here. Is allocated 32 to electrical, which is basically to bring the power under the road and then install a green buoy for the 3 new lots. And we've got a 10% contingency on construction cost allocated. Applications post DA, so that's basically getting through the operational works approvals phase. And infrastructure charges might actually be a little bit light on there. I think we're more than that now in Moreton Bay. Bit of street landscaping, a nominal amount for other bits and pieces that always will pop up. Some calculations on land tax, water, council rates. Haven't allowed anything in this one for project or development management. We would manage it in-house, pretty straightforward development. She's just realizing that with the fact that it's DA, that's actually quite a generous time frame, but we'll leave it for now. Now, this is where this template mostly alters from the other one that you see me use in the finance model. And reason being is if you're doing your smaller developments, 1 into 2, up to 1 into 5, typically you're going to do something like buy the property on a standard investment loan, and then you're going to fund the construction with cash. That's typically how it works. You might do it differently. You might get a commercial facility, but it's often not worth it for the smaller sites. And typically doing the way I just mentioned is the more cost-effective way. Once you get to larger projects, doing it that way doesn't work because it's too obvious that it's a development site. So the banks won't give you a standard investment loan on it. And typically the valuation that you're paying won't stack up to it just being an investment property. It's going to be a development site price you're paying. So in this, that means finance can often be separated into 2 sections. It'll be basically your purchase and your DA phase and your operational works phase. And then once you get to the point being ready to actually turn soil, then often you'll have a new facility come in, which will be your construction facility, which will pay out the old facility. And now you've got a construction facility, which is based on the as complete valuation. So it might be a case that, if we look at this scenario here, where we're saying, okay, gross realization is 2.959, and he's modeled it on a 60% LVR on, won't be the gross, but on the valuation. So that's suggesting that the bank would give us 1.6 million in debt, or whoever our lender is. And based on the interest rate he's put there, it seems pretty clear he's working on like a private money lender. Banks aren't going to aren't charging 11%. But note to those, this is kind of getting a bit far ahead, but LVR is one thing. What will often happen when you get into the larger sites with the financiers, like your more mainstream, like tier 1 financiers, tier 2 financiers, it's actually normally the development cost ratio that is what's going to cap how much debt they're going to give you. So how much debt relative to the cost of the development. And so in this case here, our total development cost is 2 million. This is an 82% lend against the total cost. The likes of Commonwealth Bank and Westpac and ANZ are not going to give you an 82% debt to cost ratio. It's going to be something more along the lines of 50 to 60%. Okay, so this is one of those things where, yes, other lenders might be more expensive, but if they're going to give you a lot more cash, sometimes it's worthwhile, because if they're not giving it to you, where's the cash coming from? And even if it's your cash, there's an opportunity cost associated with it. So yeah, that's why you'll see, I think when you're starting out, people often have a thought in their head that they always need to get the cheapest finance. You'll find over time, often you'll prioritize flexibility rather than cheap. And then you've also got to look at, okay, what is the actual mixed interest rate? So if, for argument's sake, you went and got a 50% LVR from Westpac, and then you needed to still raise like another $500,000 to bridge the gap because they're giving you so much less. Well, depending on the rate of that, let's say you had to pay investors 15 or 20% as an argument, because they're going to be either unsecured or they're going to be second mortgage. Well, when you actually blend that and go, well, what's my cost for that? What's my cost for that? and what is my cost overall, you might find that it actually ends up being similar to just going with a private money lender or a third tier lender to start with. And this might just be simpler and less stuffing around. So that's something to just consider in the bigger picture. All right, so he's gone on a 70% lend at the purchase, clearly with like a third tier lender or a money lender, private money lender, and then 60-40 at construction. So it's calculating here our interest costs here. And this is basically going from the point of construction onwards. There's many different ways I could spin this. So we're not going to get caught up into that now. But when you go slightly larger in projects, there's many different things you can play with here, but we'll leave that for now. Here is the estimated sales prices for these lots, which still blows my mind for some of these areas. And then we've got an allocation for some marketing costs, commissions for agents, and costs of legals. That's a bit low these days. It's probably more like that. Oh, not that much. I'm saying about 1,000 a lot. Allocation for GST. So we've got our total net realization. So gross realization, net realization after all of those other costs for sales and GST. So where does that leave us? That leaves us at a 21% ROI and a $500,000 profit if we buy it at 1.6 million. All right, so for those that saw the initial email for this session, you'll see that they're asking 2.5 million. And their position is that they're either getting 2.5 million or they're doing it themselves. Okay. So how have they come up with 2.5 million? Well, sometimes that's a dangerous question to ask, and don't bother asking it, because to assume that vendors actually know the true value of their sites, especially when you're talking smaller sites where you're typically buying from a mum and dad that have never done one before. You're not necessarily going to find a lot of logic there. It often can be a case of they've just attached their mind to a number because they've imagined a future with that number, and now they just can't let go of it. Because when you look at this and you go, all right, number one, chances are they are not aware that the lots can even sell for this much. I would be pretty confident on that, because we only know that because we are in the market right now selling land, and we're seeing how much the land is just jumping. Highly unlikely they even know that the land can sell for that much. It's probably more likely that they are there looking, going, oh, well, we think the land, everything together, can sell for 2.5 mil. So we want you to pay us 2.5 mil, even though that means there's no profit. And that's kind of in their mindset that, oh, there is no cost of developing. So that's that ignorance of or naivety of people that haven't done development, so therefore they don't know what they don't know. So unfortunately with this one, it's a no-go, because they have that unrealistic expectation, even in this market, for what their site is worth. And this is a market where people are paying silly prices for sites, but I don't see them getting 2.5 mil. That's a massive leap above what that site is truly worth. So if you pay 2.5 mil for that site, let's put that in. Based on this feasibility, at 2.5 mil, you lose 400,000. Now let's assume that you are a cash buyer and a cash developer, which you'll find very rarely exists because it's a very poor, it's not a very exciting return. Well, not as exciting as we know how to create with a little bit of debt. But let's just, for argument's sake, say that there's no cost to the finance. The site still loses $200,000. So this is unfortunately just one of those cases where, look, good on them for giving it a red hot crack. They've gone and got a DA. They've added some value to their property, and they've actually achieved something pretty awesome in the fact that they managed to get 4 lots there, where based on the code, they should only get 3. So kudos to them. Unfortunately, their expectations or their awareness of where the value sits in the market is a long way away from reality. But look, in those cases, all you can do is wish them all the best. So, all right, so that's that for that site. Definitely not proceeding with that one. continue to send your questions through if you've got them. I'm just going to spin a little bit now to the market update. So what am I seeing in the market? So obviously I'm most active in Brisbane. So for those in other cities, take this for what it's worth. Where we are in the cycle, it's typical for the likes of Adelaide, Perth, Brisbane to be doing better than Sydney and Melbourne. Second half of the cycle, Melbourne and Sydney tend to struggle. So that's perfectly acceptable, or I guess expected. But we are coming towards the end of this cycle. We are at the peak phase. Where the peak is, no one knows until after the fact exactly where the peak is. But we are certainly in that phase of the peak. Does that mean it's today, tomorrow? No, couldn't tell you. But all the things we're seeing now with world conflict, inflation coming back, most likely continuing interest rate rises, all of these things are very typical for the end of the cycle. And the analogy I would give you is that it's kind of like the system, the pressure on the system is getting dialed up because of these conflicts, because of inflation likely to come back and could come back quite aggressively, and therefore interest rates going up. So all of these things are just dialing up the pressure on a system that is already under pressure. And what happens when you continue to dial up the pressure? Eventually it finds a weak spot. And what's worse is when that weak spot is invisible and you don't know, but the bleeding has already started. And so this is happening in the background until eventually it's like a moment. Now, again, timing, who knows? This year, next year, like if you adhere strictly to the 18-year cycle, it suggests that this year should be the peak, and 27 and 28, somewhere between 27 and 28 is the crisis year or years. Now, there is certainly plenty of stuff that is lining up, suggesting that we're kind of on the right track for that cycle to complete itself. Does that say that there's no opportunities? No, it doesn't. I'm still looking for opportunities. It's never a bad time to buy a good opportunity, but it's a bad time to be irresponsible with purchasing, that is for sure. So, my prediction is I do believe we'll have a number of more interest rate rises. There's a solid chance that we could be in for some pretty aggressive inflation again over the next 12 months. So, there's a view there to take that if there's things you're looking at doing over and this is not just in development, if you take a view of you think that's going to happen, then there is an argument to go, well, what were things I was looking at doing over the next 12 months, and pre-purchase them now, or pre-book them now, or bring the construction of that forward, or whatever it might be. Because typically it's inflation drives the prices up. You don't always get deflation that then brings the prices back again. Typically you don't. It does happen, but it happens less than, that doesn't make any sense. On these inflationary times, it's less likely to come back afterwards than to come back. So what I'm saying is be wary, be mindful. I'm not saying don't buy opportunities. I'm just saying certainly don't buy anything that is under pressure already. Buy good sites, buy under market value. As challenging as that can be in this market, it is happening. All right, there are still exciting opportunities happening. There's one I'm working to get involved with at the moment, which is a very exciting opportunity, which I look forward to sharing with you at some point. But yeah, as always, you've got to be looking for ways to get things off market. You've got to be looking for ways to see things in a different light. There is the Southeast Queensland review that is going to be happening this year. It's kind of already starting. That is going to create opportunity. It creates disruption. It creates confusion. It creates arbitrages. Brisbane City Council, as an example, is reviewing their scheme. Many of the councils are, because of the massive demand for housing that we are falling so short on. Okay, so whenever there are those changes in the planning scheme, that always releases new opportunity and creates opportunities where it is less of a price war. So my suggestion to you is get really familiar with the changes that are coming. Immerse yourself in it. Okay, all it takes is just one little bit of information that enables you to see things differently or get ahead of the curve, and bang, there's your first project. Maybe even your second, your third, and your fourth. Okay, so pay attention, go to events, immerse yourself, get into local community groups that are looking at this kind of thing, discussing this kind of thing, and get on the cutting edge. Sitting behind a computer screen, not the cutting edge. You are like so far away from the cutting edge, it's not funny. This sort of thing is helpful, but you need to get out there as well. All right, that's it from me today. Any other questions, add them to the comments and I will come back to them. But wish you all the best, guys. Hope that was valuable today. And I will see you soon. You are welcome.